Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jeremy Walsh. I'm the Director of Support for BNI Connect. Along with me today, we have a special guest. Her name is Meaghan Chitwood, and Meaghan is the Executive Director of BNI in North Alabama. She has been an Executive Director for 8 years. Last year, she was awarded the number 9 region in traffic lights in the world. Meaghan is also a business analyst for the BNI Connect project, and I can attest that I work with Meaghan very closely, and she is probably one of the smartest people that I know. She also runs an extremely successful region. Her chapters are all using the goals program as well as the traffic lights program, so she brings a lot of knowledge to the table that I'm hoping that we can all tap into today. A couple of things about the webinar. This webinar is being recorded. It will be made available at some point after the webinar is over, probably in a couple of days after we're able to get the webinar uploaded to our YouTube channel, which is, if you go to YouTube, BNI Connect Global is the name of the YouTube channel. If you have any questions during the webinar, feel free to use the questions panel. It might also be called the chat panel in your webinar software, and that will allow us to answer questions as we're going along if it pertains to what we're talking about, or we should end up with some time towards the end of this webinar as well to answer any questions that you have. If you are using a computer that happens to have a microphone or you're dialed in with a telephone and you'd like to speak your question out loud, just raise your hand and we should be able to unmute your microphone and allow you to speak your question as well. Now, before we get started, for those of you that may be new to BNI Connect, what I'd like to do is share a little story. And this actually happened to me about, I'd say about 2 months ago now. And I was sitting here in my office and a client walks into my office and walks right up to my desk and says, listen, I need a referral. And how cool is that? How often does that happen that a client actually just walks in and said, I need a referral? So I said, great, how can I help you? So he said, I have an in-house bookkeeper, but she needs to be shown some stuff on QuickBooks and just some advanced things. So I said, oh, great, you know what? I have somebody in my chapter that does that. I have he's QuickBooks certified, and I'd love to refer you to him. So what I did was I really wanted to use BNI Connect for that. So I went to our regional website, which is bniri.com, and I went to find a member. His name happens to be Glenn Zabolis, and what I really wanted to do was to take this page, his BNI Connect page, and print it out in order to give it to this client of mine that was standing right here as kind of an advanced business card. Unfortunately, Glenn now has a picture up here, but before, when this happened, it really doesn't have much information on it. So whereas trying to kind of increase Glenn's visibility and credibility and turn that into some profitability, it kind of left me limited. Unfortunately, my little red binder was sitting on the front seat of my car, so I couldn't really just grab his business card out. So I ended up pulling out a little real sticky note and writing it on a piece of paper, but it wasn't quite the boost I wanted. In contrast, if somebody had went to give me a referral on BNI Connect and they went to my particular page on BNI Connect, they would have had a lot more information. So they would have had my phone number, they would have had my address, they would have had all my social media links so they could look me up on Facebook and connect with me on LinkedIn, as well as some more information about my business, what good referrals were to me. So we're not going to be concentrating on this today, but it's a great thing to take back to your chapters, is if you can talk to them about making sure that they fill out their profiles on BNI Connect. And people around the world are using BNI Connect to refer to members. They're finding people, they're searching people, and they're looking to pass referrals. So just wanted to share that with you guys. And what we're going to be talking about today, on the other hand, is chapter goals. And now we have a lot of people on this call today that are presidents or vice presidents or secretary treasurers of their chapters. And one of the best ways to really kickstart your chapter and keep it on track is to make sure that you outline what you want to accomplish as a chapter for the year. Meaghan, do you want to add anything about the process of goals or about why we want to input goals into our system?
Yes, well, some of the things that I found were very important to my chapters as we got started with goals. We actually spent over an hour in leadership team training this year actually having all of the chapters set their goals. So that was part of what we did. Two key things that they found to be very, very beneficial about doing that process is, one, finding out where you are. So you've got to figure out where you are before you can understand what it will take to get where you want to be. And then talk with your director to find out what does good look like. That was another thing that we found, that our chapter members just didn't really know what good looks like. And Jeremy mentioned earlier that we use traffic lights as well, and that is what I gave them as what good looks like. What do they need to hit to be in the green and traffic lights? So giving them those 2 bits of information, or taking those 2 bits of information to determine kind of what is going to be your game plan to get from where you are now to what good looks like, I think is very, very key.
Excellent. Thank you, Meaghan. Now, the goals program within BNI Connect was just recently upgraded a couple of months ago, so it's much more comprehensive than we've ever had before. And this is based on a system that was developed in Florida and is now utilized worldwide. So let's show you what that goals program looks like. Now, in the BNI Connect, the place to enter your goals is under the operations menu. So you have all these nifty tabs along the top. Now, just to give you a quick explanation, network is where you go to do things from a social media perspective. So if you want to work with your connections or you want to leave testimonials, that's where you'd go for that. Operations is where you do stuff. So for your chapter, you're entering in your POMS reports and things that you want to do within BNI Connect. Reports is where you pull that information back out. So we're going to go to the operations menu, and we're going to go to the chapter level menu. Now I'm going to switch over to our test country, which is Antarctica, just so I'm not messing with any active chapter goals. And I'm going to go to our Shiver region, and we have a chapter up there called the Burr chapter. And the place to access the goals is right here under Operations Chapter, Manage Goals. So once I click on Manage Goals, you'll see that I have a couple of options here. I can enter goals, and I can view the goals. Now, most of your chapter members, they should have the View Chapter Goals option under their Operations menu. So they should always be able to go back once the leadership team enters the goals into the system. Now, by default, your presidents, your vice presidents, and secretary treasurers will have access to input the goals, whereas the chapter members will only see this View Chapter Goals. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in and click on Enter Chapter Goals. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we need to pick a start date for when we're going to start putting the goals in. Now, BNI typically runs on 6-month terms, from October to the end of March, and then from April to the end of September. So we're just starting this next 6-month period. So a good place to start for us is probably going to be this month. So I can pick it from the drop-down list or just click on this month and click Done. Now, the next 2 options we can enter now or we can enter them later. And this is really your long-term vision and your mission statement for your chapter. Meaghan, do you want to say anything about the long-term vision for a chapter?
So if any of you are not familiar with the mission statement for BNI, BNI has a very fantastic mission statement. And what I told my chapters was get a hold of that mission statement, take a look at it, and I recommended that they use that mission statement or they modify it slightly to fit their chapter. The mission is basically what direction are you going to go, and a mission is more like a statement of the journey. It's not an end destination. So it would not be, I want a chapter of 40. The mission would be building long-term, meaningful business relationships for the purpose of passing referrals. That's yeah, there you go, perfect. That's basically the journey that you're going on, and everything you do goes towards that ultimate mission. Now, your long-term vision, on the other hand, that is a destination. Where do you want your chapter to be? And I recommend a long-term vision for the term that you're going to be serving. So start thinking in terms of where do you want to be at the end of your term. And again, that long-term vision is actually a destination. Whereas you can see what Jeremy just entered there, that's more of a journey.
This is actually the mission statement for BNI. I believe we also have Ed Wilson on the call with us today, who is from headquarters, and Ed can correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's to help members increase their business through a structured, positive, and professional word-of-mouth program that enables them to develop long-term, meaningful relationships with quality business professionals and create positive community goodwill. So I just pasted that into the mission statement. Now, I did this for the Antarctica chapter in our test system, and these are some examples of what I put into our long-term vision and mission statement. And what I put in for the long-term vision was to grow the chapter to be the largest chapter in all of Antarctica and provide at least a 1,000% return on investment for each and every one of our members. And the mission statement I had put in here was, the Burr chapter of BNI is dedicated to the glowing success of its members through the earnest application of the word-of-mouth referral process. The Burr chapter is known for its warm reception of visitors and determination to help each member succeed. So would those work, Megan?
Fantastic, perfect. You notice long-term vision is a destination, and the other is the journey.
Excellent. So once you have those put in, or again, as I said, you can put a placeholder in now, or you can come back to this later after you've met with your leadership team and you decided what your long-term vision and mission statement are going to be, and you can come back and change it at any time as well. So I'm going to click the Go button. Now, what we're going to see now is it's going to, if this is the first time you're doing this, it will pull up a blank slate for the next 6 months. And we can see that along the top here, we have all the different months. We have October, November, December, January, February, and March. So it's going to start with whatever month we put on our last option there, and it'll pull the next 6 months worth. Now, as you can see here, I did start this on a previous webinar, entering a couple of the goals, and you can see that it recalled the stuff that I had saved already in the past. So this is definitely a tool that you can do in chunks. You can do it in pieces. So get together as a leadership team, put some information in, then come back to it later after you're filling out the goals to get it to completion. Then if we use the scroll bar here, we can see that we have our different chapter success factors listed. So we have attendance percentage, the total number of one-to-ones, CEUs, visitors, new memberships, number of members in the chapter, number of referrals, and thank you for closed business. And what we're going to be doing is filling out what our targets are for each of these different goals. Now, we have another option up here, and when you're defining your goals, you have two choices of how you'd like to calculate them and set your goals out. You can either calculate them by the chapter or by the member. So, Meg, do you want to go into what the difference is between for whole chapter and per member options?
Yes, absolutely. So last year when we were setting goals, we set them for the whole chapter. And what we found was we had all of our leadership teams with their calculators out trying to figure out how much does that mean for each individual member. So you have two options. You can say for the whole chapter, so this is how many referrals we want the entire chapter to pass. So if you're looking at a PALMS report, over the last 6 months, let's say, you can use that to determine what your whole chapter goals might need to be. So you would take, what your whole chapter is doing right now and potentially improve upon that. So Jeremy, you going to pull up that report there? Yeah, perfect.
Let's pull up a PALMS report.
So that's the whole chapter. Another way of looking at it is what do we want our individual members to do? So if you're having a hard time thinking in terms of your whole chapter, so it's an example here, the totals across the bottom. So right now, the number of referrals being passed is around 111 a month, right? So you would look at that and you say, okay, well, the next month we want to do 100, we want to do 112. And you kind of take it from there. Or on the other hand, you can say, okay, what does good look like for an individual member? What do we want our individual members to do? And in fact, so in that case, you could look at what does the individual member do on average, and you can take an average of RGI, or referral given inside, and RGO, or referrals given outside, and you can say, what do we want our average member to be able to do? So that's kind of the difference in looking at that. So you can do it in either way. There's no right or wrong way. When you do it on a per member basis, the system just does all the calculations for you. Those calculations are based on the goal number of members you have. So keep that in mind. So it actually takes the number of members you have as your goal, not as your actual today. It takes that goal and it calculates how many when you're doing it on a per member basis. So it's just something to keep in mind.
Excellent. So what I'm using in this particular instance, now a key note before I go any further is you can't switch back and forth between the two. So you do have to pick how you want to calculate your goals, either as for whole chapter or per member, and stick with it. It's not a toggle that will recalculate things back and forth if you switch back and forth. So pick one and stick with it.
And if you happen to open up your view goals and you see that your goal is to do 1,000 referrals, you probably entered a whole chapter number when the per member button was clicked. So that's just something to keep in mind if there happens to be some errors.
Excellent. So what we're going to do here is we're going to kind of go through our various the various success factors that we have here and start to analyze, like, what do we want to do for each of these things. So attendance percentage. What attendance percentage is really, how often are people showing up to your meeting? This one you do have to, if you wanted to calculate out what you're currently doing, you would have to go to a POMS report. And let's say that we pull up a 1-month report here again. So let's say I want to just pull up the report for September for this chapter up there in Antarctica. And as we pull up this POMS report, what we'd have to do is to take the number of meetings that are in the month and find out how many absences we're getting, and figure out what we want to have as the present percentage. So I feel like I didn't explain that well, though, Meaghan. Do you want to help me out there? Oh, I think we lost Meaghan on the microphone there. But so our goal here, my personal goal would be to always have 100% attendance in our chapters, but that may not always be possible. So I'm starting out a little bit low with this chapter in Antarctica, and I'm choosing a percentage of 95%. And then I'm hoping to work that up to about 96% the next month, and we can continue that throughout the year. Some things to keep in mind when you're working on your attendance percentage is that you want to take in mind the months as well. And if you find that certain months, such as December, which might be a month filled with holidays, and summer months, to adjust your goals accordingly to make sure that they are achievable results as well. Now, what you'll
Sorry
see
about that,
here.
Jeremy. I was on
Oh, that's
mute.
okay.
I was going to say, most regions who do this goals program the most successfully, they guide their chapter members just to go ahead and put 100% across the board, and say, 100% is good. And then I, on the other hand, I did actually take and calculate what my chapters, where they were, so that they would be able to get some quick victories in the beginning. So we did say you can start out with 90 or 95% and then go from there.
Awesome. So the next things that you'll see under here are a couple of mechanism boxes. And what the mechanisms are is they help you to plan out what you're going to do to achieve those goals going forward. So what activities could you do in your chapter in order to get a better percentage? Now, you can see I put a couple in here to increase our attendance percentage, one of which is to make sure that the The leadership team works on the control letters and make sure that they're sending out the letters after a first absence, a second absence, a third absence, etc. And another one that I had was educational moments. So we could work with the educational coordinator in order to do some teaching about why it's really, really important to show up and show up on time, and how it may increase your visibility as well as your credibility by making sure that you're at your chapter meeting. Now, Meaghan, do you have some other great mechanisms that we could think about for increasing attendance in a chapter?
Well, the one thing that I loved that my chapter members came up with was actually doing a lot more recognition around attendance. A lot of times we think in terms of, oh, we're all adults here and things like that. But in school, we got perfect attendance records. So we actually did. I loved the fact that they wanted to recognize people for attendance. And you can say, consecutive months without an absence. Of course, including subs as not being absent. But yeah, that's definitely one of them. And then another one is, and consult your director on this one. Some of my chapters have decided to put together a sub list. There are big, huge pros and cons to that. So again, talk to your director about that to see if they would be comfortable with that. But with the substitute list, we did have we encouraged them to do an emergency substitute list where you literally had people on there that you could call the morning of your meeting. So we actually did have one gentleman who said, if you can call me as early as 4:30 a.m. And give me 30 minutes notice, then I can make it to your meeting. So that person became the go-to person when people woke up sick or their car wouldn't start or something like that. So that's something to consider.
Well, what's his coverage area, Meg?
I know, right? I don't think he can get up to Rhode Island.
I don't think so either.
But I thought it was great. Yeah.
And let me show you guys a quick report as well. If you're going to be doing some chapter recognition on attendance, there's an awesome report for that in BNI Connect that can help you with that. So if you go to Reports, Chapter, and notice I'm opening it in a new tab here so that we don't lose what we're doing here. That's just a great technique to use within the system. And if we go to the POMS attendance report down here, this is kind of what this report was designed for. And if I click on the report, it's going to choose 6 months by default. And if we click on the report, it gives us a graphical view of the attendance in the chapter. And what we see is anybody that has an absence will show up as a red. And you can quickly look to see if somebody has presence all the way down in a row. So if you're doing this for, let's say, best attendance in 6 months or perfect attendance during the term and you want to recognize those people, this is a great tool to do that. So another one that I had on here was bring your substitute day, which is a great, another way, and same with your substitute list, but this is kind of a dual purpose one. It gets your substitute used to, if they've never been experienced BNI before, they know what to expect and they can be prepared and they know what a 60-second is all about and they're not nervous about the meeting. But that's a great way to get visitors to your chapter as well. I've seen a number of times that people have brought their substitute to a BNI meeting and they ended up turning into a member. So just something to think about there. All right, let's move on to the total number of one-to-ones. Now, my recognized goal for one-to-ones has always been to make sure that we should be doing at least one one-to-one per week. So an easy calculation here is, if you want to do this for your whole chapter, is to take your number of members, multiply it by the number of weeks, and you should have the correct number of one-to-ones. Does that sound about right, Meaghan? Do you have another suggestion for that?
That's exactly what we teach. Absolutely.
So let me just see. We have a couple of questions. Oh, so we have a couple of topical questions here. What did all the letters mean on the attendance POMS report? Let me just switch back over to that report real quick and show you. And what these letters are on the POMS attendance report is the same as POMS. So P equals present, A equals absent, L equals late, M equals medical, and S equals substitute. So present, absent, late, medical, and substitute. So Tracy has a question here. Said at the leadership team meeting they said not to have a substitute list, and that's why we had that big caveat. We do have members from regions around the world on this call, so do please check with your executive director or your director consultant for your chapter and ask how they deal with subs in your particular region. Every region has their own way that they work with substitutes and substitute lists. So Tracy, definitely check with your director consultant. And Andrea says, please repeat that calculation for one-to-one. I was taking notes. If you just, because all these goals are by month, what you need to do is to just take the number of members in your chapter and multiply it by the number of weeks. So if you have 30 members in your chapter and there are 4 weeks in the month, you're going to be looking for a monthly goal of 120 one-to-ones per month. So if you were doing this on a per member calculation, then you'd probably want the goal to be, if it's a 4-week month, 4. If it's a 5-week month, there are some 5-week months out there, then you'd like it to be 5. So does that help, Andrea? And let's see. Paul says, do let folks know that there are rules around the medical piece. It's not just a cold. That is correct. There is a policy regarding medical leave, and medical leave is supposed to be from and Ed, please jump in here and correct me if I'm wrong here. So I guess Meaghan, I'm sure you know the rules inside and out on this one as well, but it should be up to a 6-week medical leave, and that is, it's intended for things like you need to have an operation or you're sick in a more major way that you are going to be missing the meeting for a long period of time. Now, it is not intended for just an absence where you couldn't get out of bed or you were up too late the night before or you had a cold. One thing to note, go ahead.
It also needs to be pre-approved by the membership committee. And just one thing to correct here means you can get up to 8 weeks.
Oh, up to 8 weeks.
It needs to be, it needs to be approved ahead of time by the membership committee.
So Ed, thank you for correcting that. And Adrian asks, with medical leave, do they still need a sub? And a sub is recommended, but it is not, you don't get marked as being absence. That is what the medical leave is designed for. So your membership does still tick during that time period. So your membership isn't suspended during that time. Your seat is preserved in the chapter.
There's a question, is there a database of mechanisms? So Jeremy, you want to click on that chapter goals guide up there and I can show them that real quick. So in the chapter goals guide, this actually is your list of mechanisms that you can use. The one thing I always like to tell my members is you can probably be much more creative than the director consultants to put this together. So this is not a comprehensive list, but this is a list that will give you some ideas. You can always pick something that's going to really work for your chapter, and we want to make sure that it is definitely going to be something that your chapter can actually execute.
Excellent. And some people have taken this. You can also go through and copy and paste this into a Word document if you'd like to be able to refer to this outside of the system. If you wanted to, let's say, have a leadership team meeting somewhere and sit down and map this out on paper as opposed to in the computer, you could always do it that way as well.
So I might be, Jeremy, I might kick myself later for this, but I'm going to do it anyway. If you would like a paper version or a Word version of the goals as well as mechanisms, you can email me at meg@bnialabama.com, and I will send you over our paper version that we used during our leadership team training.
And if you don't want to give Meg a heart attack, you're also welcome to email support@bniconnect.com, and Meg will get that over to us. I'll also post it on our support site for you as part of the upload for this recorded webinar later. So if that helps, and eases your inbox a little bit, Meg.
Perfect.
Okay, so let's move on to the next success factor here, and that's the CEUs, or the Chapter Education Units. Now, for those of you that aren't using this in your region, what this is it roughly equates to about an hour per credit of time that you invest in learning about networking. Usually by attending things like these webinars or going to leadership team training, listening to Ivan's podcasts. And by the way, there's a great podcast this week, episode 275, and it deals with BNI Connect. So I recommend going to bnipodcast.com and go listen to that one. Reading Dr. Meisner's books, all those types of things count as educational units. It would be the gold slip that you pass in your chapter. So some goals for this, for regions that are using the traffic lights, we usually recommend averaging at least 1 CEU per week. So this is kind of the same calculation that we talk about with the number of one-to-ones per week. So you would just take your number of members and multiply it by the number of weeks that are in the month. So if you have a 30-member chapter, again, you're looking at approximately 120. So do you have some recommendations for how to increase the CEUs in your chapter, Meg?
The two big ones for this is get all of your members signed up for SuccessNet. You get 1 point for reading SuccessNet. And then the other one is get them all signed up to receive the weekly podcast into their email inbox. And those two things will at least help them get at least 2 points during the month. And then the other one is, as we also recommend, if you can get members to go back through the Member Success Program at least once a year, that can increase the number of points as well. I think that's 2 points in the CEUs.
Excellent. So there's tons of resources out there for increasing the CEUs, tons of networking blogs. Again, talk to your director consultant, and I'm sure that they have a number of resources. One way is to also to build a chapter library if you don't have one of those already, and to fill it with books, and I'm sure that your executive directors would be able to point you in the right direction for that as well. While we're at it, Christina has a question up here. She says, is there something that explains what some of the mechanisms are? Some are pretty self-explanatory, but others, like the BNI game, I've never heard of. I don't know if we have time to go through all of the mechanisms in detail on this call. Your director consultant is a wealth of knowledge, and they love to share information about all of these things. I do know that things like the BNI game are in the chapter toolkit, which is a document that you hopefully received during training. Mostly the presidents receive the chapter toolkit. It's also available in a lot of regions via BNI Connect in the download section and in the document section. But if you need some more information after the call, if your director consultant can't point you in the right place, let us know and we'll try to help you out as much as we can as well. So the BNI game, for those that have never heard of it, is what we do is we split the chapter into teams, usually 3 or 4 teams of, in general, 5, 6, 7 people per team. And the teams compete against each other for points. Usually they're around the same things that we're talking about today. So for example, bringing in a visitor might be worth 5 points, and passing a referral at the meeting might be worth 3 points or 10 points or whatever it is that you're working on, and you can assign the point value yourself. And as you get through this game term, usually 6 to 8 weeks, the winner ends up, sometimes you have a special event. In our region, what we usually do is a chapter social at the end, and the winning team doesn't have to bring anything or doesn't have to clean up or something like that. So that's all laid out in that chapter toolkit. And again, see your executive director or director consultant, and they should be able to get that information over to you. All right, so the next success factor on this list is the visitors. And again, this is the number of visitors that you'd like to see in your chapter on a monthly basis. Now, with the visitors, and we keep talking about traffic lights a lot, the thing that we shoot for in the traffic lights program is 1 visitor per member per month. So 1 visitor per member per month. Meg, is that about equate with what you recommend?
That is absolutely. Yes, 1 visitor per member per month is absolutely fantastic. If you think about that, that'll be, basically over the course of the month, you'd almost double the number of people in the room at any given time. So it is, yeah, that's exactly what we recommend. If you're doing that, you have a successful chapter without any question.
Excellent. Some mechanisms that we recommend for increasing the number of visitors. The good old-fashioned Visitors Day is always wonderful. We also have stack days where you concentrate on a specific profession and you try to invite that specific profession for that week. There's the Bring Your Substitute Day. There is Invite for the Speaker is a great way to invite as well, and kind of do mini stack days every single week by making sure that you're bringing an audience in to listen to the speaker. While we're in here, let me show you another report in BNI Connect that might help you out with figuring out people to invite to your chapter. Now I'm going to switch back here. Hold on a second. I'm going to switch back to a real country in BNI Connect. I'm going to go to the United States. And I'm going to go to my own region here, and I'm going to go to my own chapter. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to Reports and then Chapter. And a great report for inviting visitors is the Classifications Not in Chapter report. And if you go to this Classifications Not in Chapter report, this is going to do is it's going to take your chapter and compare it to all the other chapters in your region and let you know what professions you're missing that are filled in a lot of the other chapters in your region. So an example here is this is my chapter here in Wakefield. I am a member of the Wakefield chapter in Rhode Island. And you can see that we don't have an electrician in our chapter, but there are 9 other chapters in the region that have an electrician. Now, that means that, there's quite a few of these electricians out here in our region that are doing pretty well because they're filling up the chapters. We have about 22 chapters in the state, so that's almost half of the chapters have an electrician and we don't. And maybe one of those chapters can even recommend a colleague or somebody within their own company that might want to join as an electrician in our chapter. And the same thing for bank services and chiropractor. And if you're just struggling saying, oh, I think we've invited every category we could possibly think of, have a look at this report and use the scroll button. There are a lot of categories listed here. So if you're running out of ideas for who to invite to your chapter, pull up the Classifications Not in Chapter report and have a look at it. Meg, did you want to add any other great ideas that Alabama uses for increasing visitors in their chapter?
You stole my thunder, actually. That is exactly what we guide them to, is looking at that report. I don't believe in trying to use too much brain power to figure these things out. We give you a lot of the information right here in BNI Connect. Cool. Just going back a second, Debbie Price asks a question. How do I know how many CEUs are per training? Again, it roughly equates to an hour per credit. But take a look at the form. The form has it listed out on there, and definitely talk to your director consultant or your executive director, and they'll be able to talk about how they use CEUs in your region. And April says, I'm in California and I haven't seen the gold form. Again, talk to your executive director, director consultant, and they will be able to work with that and let you know when that might be rolled out in your region. Michael says the California form is actually white. So there we go. Okay, so the next one is new memberships. And we have the new memberships, and this is how many of those visitors you're basically converting into new members into your chapter. Now, Meg, do you have a goal that you use as a standard for chapter growth, or how many new memberships per member? So one thing that's very important for you to know is on average, you are going to lose about 1 member per month. And I say that on average because a lot of times it happens in droves where you lose 3 or 4 at a time. So it's not going to actually happen ratably necessarily. But you will on average lose about 12 members per year. So if you want your chapter to stay the same size, you would want to have about 1 new membership per month to focus on, okay? So that's, 1 new member per month. If you want to grow, obviously you need more than 1 member. So if you want to grow by 1 each month, then you would need to bring in 2 new members per month in order to grow there. We looked at some data, and this is theoretical because we have actually not been able to pull it off yet, but if you bring in about 2 new members per month, you will increase your chapter size sometimes in the area of net growth of 10 new members. So if you really focus on just 2 new members per month, that you can really expand your chapter quite a bit. And double your chapter, you triple the amounts of referrals that are passed to you. So, so that's definitely something you want to consider.
And I'm sure bringing in those new members helps to bring those members that may have left during that time and helps to keep them there as well, helps with your retention rates within the chapter because there's more excitement, the chapter is growing, and they may want to stay a part of that.
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent. So the next one is number of members in chapter, and this is just your chapter total. So you kind of want to take the number of members that you currently have, and hopefully your goal is to grow the chapter and increase that number sequentially by how much you think you're going to grow over the next couple of months. Meg, did you want to add anything to that one?
Nope, that's really the key piece there. The key piece there.
All right. Number of referrals. Now, referring back to the traffic lights program, we try to shoot for, in order to stay in the green, 1 referral per member per week. So 1 referral per member per week. Does this sound familiar? I think it's the same calculation we use for CEUs and for one-to-ones. So again, what you could do is take the number of members that you have in the chapter, multiply it by the number of weeks, and you would have a actual number of referrals as a starting goal for what you'd like to accomplish. Meg, did you want to add anything to that?
It's really funny. Something you might want to do, just maybe have your education coordinator do. We did this and we thought it was absolutely hilarious. Ask your chapter how many referrals per week is good, and see all the different answers you get. From the real estate agent who might bring a ton to the member who kind of starts to sink down in their seat. But that's an interesting way to get the point across that it's very important that you bring 1 referral per week.
Excellent. And finally, we have the thank you for closed business. Now, this one I can't refer back to any kind of traffic lights program because it's not included in that. But as far as chapter goals, my way of thinking about this is that we have a average return on investment right now. I believe the last figure I heard, BNI worldwide is about $35,000 per member per year. Is that still an accurate number, Meg?
Yeah, I would say yeah, and I've also heard 25. So if you hear a quote between 20 and 35, that's about right.
Excellent. So my guess is if you were to take one of those 2 numbers or any number that you come up with as your own goal, let's say that we were using 36 just because it's a nice divisible by 12 number, that would be approximately $3,000 per month per member. And that would just be a starting point for you to go there. So think about what your thank you for closed business goals, what you want that big number to be. I know our chapter, personally, we set a goal of $3.5 million in closed business for our chapter, knowing that we closed just around $3 million last year. So I would just take that number and divide it by 12 and come up with our monthly goals from there. So.
And that's exactly it, Jeremy. The thing you have to keep in mind about those particular goals is that it relies less on what you actually do, and it relies a lot on how well the member can sell their service. So that's exactly what I told my members to do, is pick a real inspiring number you want to go for. Is it $1 million? Is it $2 million? Is it $1.5 million? Pick a number that can inspire the chapter, and then kind of divide it down into what that means on a per member and per month basis.
Excellent. Now, we had another question in here from Bill that I missed a couple of minutes ago. He says, sorry, new at this late question. When I bring my substitute to a meeting, how is it he could join when we work for the same company? And that would be, you would need to bring a substitute that is from a different company. So the best substitutes, really, I've always found is when I get a substitute for myself in my chapter, I typically get one of my clients to come and substitute for me. And the reason for that is that they can talk about my business because I'm doing work for them so they know what I do, but also hopefully if they are a good client and happy with my services, they can give me a testimonial much better and increase my credibility more than I could possibly do for myself. So usually substitutes, again, invite other people. They don't have to be somebody from your company that is sitting in your seat. And when you use that as a definition for a substitute, then that makes it much more likely that that other person may be able to join the chapter. So, Meg, did you want to add anything to that?
No, that's exactly it. And we try and encourage people to bring all kinds of different substitutes. Even your spouse might spend a lot of money with your BNI members if they happen to show up at the meeting. They might not want to join, but they might spend a little bit of your money while they're there.
Okay, so once you have your goals established and you have your mechanisms sold out, what you're going to do is you're going to save your changes. Now, if you're doing these in front of a computer with the rest of your leadership team, you may find you get off in discussion points, just like I did. If you notice, this system, the other test system that I was in, was about to time out on me. So if you let that happen, you will lose everything that you entered. So be sure that you save periodically by clicking on the Save button down at the bottom. And it'll allow you to go right back to where you were in order to continue entering the goals. So it is a 35-minute timeout. That means no typing, no moving the mouse around for 35 minutes, and it will log you out of the system. So do make sure that you save every once in a while. Now, because I did this in Antarctica, the cool thing about doing these goals in the system is that after you put them in, as time goes by, you can go back and look at the actuals. So if we go now to this Antarctica Shiver region on a test system, and I look at our chapter goals, and I'm going to look at our chapter goals going back because I filled them in earlier in the year, we can see that what's happening is it's starting to populate the results of the goals as they happen. So as the vice presidents enter the POMS reports, it goes through and it calculates all this information out. So you can see here that I put in goals of 96% all the way through. And we can see that in May, we had a 100% rate on our actual for the attendance percentage. In June, we had a tougher time getting to the meetings, and it was only 94%, and the same in July. And our vice president in Antarctica, I'm ashamed to admit, is a bit behind and hasn't entered any POMS reports for August and September. So the same is true for total number of one-to-ones. Our goal was 256, 272, but people had a hard time getting out of their houses in Antarctica. It was a very cold month, and we fell behind on our goals there. And same thing for CEUs. I figured with online training, people would be able to attend and get more CEUs better, but I heard the internet's not so good up there either. Now with visitors, we were able to get visitors to the chapters, and we can see how we stacked up against our goals there. We do have a question from Penelope. She says, what is the hot seat program? And that's another program in your chapters where what you do is you assign a member to let me back up. What you do is you make a list. So you have all the members in your chapter, and you scramble them up. So you randomize that list. The person at the top of the list is in the hot seat. and they are responsible for making sure that they bring the next visitor to the chapter. So as the weeks go by, they get a little bit more pressure from other chapter members to make sure that they bring a visitor to the chapter. So they're in the quote-unquote hot seat. Now, anybody that brings a visitor during that time, when you bring a visitor, you automatically go to the bottom of the list. So it's just a fun game that you can play to keep excitement about visitors going in your chapter. So hopefully that answers your question, Penelope. And again, you can see the rest of the goals that have been filled out with the actuals, again, as the POMS reports are filled out. One thing to keep in mind is that there is a 24-hour delay for the actuals to fill in. So it's actually a process that runs overnight that goes through and it scoops up all of the POMS reports of the 6,500 chapters that are entered worldwide and creates the goals out of them and fills in the actuals. So when you do enter your goals in, if you're entering them in the past, that's great. You can go back and backfill these if you'd like to, but it will be tomorrow before you can actually see the actuals populated. So Meg, is there anything else you wanted to add to this, to the actual report part of it?
No, that's about it. Just to reiterate, keep in mind that if you do not have your goals entered, then the calculations won't actually happen. So the system only knows to calculate when it actually sees that goal. So if you were to go into your chapter right now, you would not see any actuals until those goals have been populated, as Jeremy says, overnight.
Excellent. Do we have any questions so far about anything that we've covered in the system? As far as the goals mechanisms, the goals reporting. And keep in mind, again, that your members should have access to this goals report, to this view chapter goals. So this is something that you can share with the rest of your chapter. Leslie asks, can the goals be edited after they have been entered? And yes, you can go in and edit the goals after you've entered them. All you need to do is make sure that so if I was to go into enter chapter goals here, I would just have to make sure that I go back to a month that contains those goals. And I can go into any of these fields and enter the goals that were put in there. Now, if it's, again, the actuals, you can't use it as kind of a calculation to play with what you have in there for past results already because, again, those won't be updated until the overnight cron job runs, that timed report runs. But you can go back and fix mistakes or edits that you made. And yes, you can edit for past months as well as upcoming months. So now keep in mind, this is an honor system tool for you guys to use for your own chapters and for your own use. So that is something, you're kind of only cheating yourself if you go back and play around with the numbers. Abraham asks, how can we contact who do we contact to obtain information about traffic lights? You can contact Meg or myself, but I highly recommend you first go to your executive director to talk about the traffic lights program. So definitely contact your executive director or your director consultant, and if they're not sure about what it is or more information on it, send them to Meg and myself. So. Let's see. Ed Wilson says, can I change from the whole chapter to per member once the 6 months is over and we do the goals again? At that point, yes, you can. It'll just start doing the numbers from that point forward, and all your previous numbers that you put in there will be messed up. So does that, Meg, am I correct on that?
Yes. Yeah. You can play around with it. There is a way that you can switch between. You just kind of have to play with it and tinker with it until you get it just right. Like I said, I would recommend kind of picking one philosophy or the other and trying to stick with it.
So yeah, at some point you won't be looking at those goals from 6 months or a year or 2 years ago, but if you do want to switch, I mean, different leadership teams may have a different way that they're comfortable with calculating it. So Bill asks, do we get credit for our chapter automatically, or do we need to do something special? I'm not sure what you're referring to there, Bill, as far as getting credit for your chapter. So if you could clarify that, I would love to answer that question for you. Oh, get credit for listening to the webinar. Yes, you'll have to turn in, if this is accepted in your region as a CEU credit, you will have to turn in a slip at your chapter meeting in order to get credit for attending this webinar. So, all right. So do we have any other questions about goals, or is there anybody interested in a sneak preview of what's coming in the system next month?
If you don't think you want a preview, believe me, you want a preview.
All right, we're seeing a couple of yeses pop up there. So, all right, so here's what's coming in the next version of BNI Connect that should be out the last week in October, if not, really last week in October, first week in November. So we still have a couple of weeks yet before it comes out, but we just got our first release for testing, for beta testing. So couple of really, really cool things. And this is our test system. And if I go into the test system, you'll notice that this is the new home page. Now, contrast this with, this is the current home page, right? And this is the new home page. Now, what you'll see here is right up front, you'll see your activity in BNI. So you see your last 12 months, and we'll see your numbers for the last 12 months, and then also your lifetime in BNI. So you get to see just how much thank you for closed business, referrals received, visitors, one-to-one CEUs for your entire lifetime in BNI. And all of that is calculated automatically. You notice up here you can now update your status a lot easier, jump right in and change your password and do some common things right on your profile. And then down here at the bottom, and again, this is going to be just for the United States at first, so if you are on this call and you're from another country, you may not see this feature right away until next year, but at least in the United States you should see this. You'll see that we can now enter and pass referrals and all of the slips that we're talking about online. So before a chapter meeting, if I have a referral, I can just click on Enter Referrals, and does this look familiar? This is the referral slip that we would normally pass in our chapter meeting. So I can select the member from our chapter that I'd like to pass a referral to, type in the information about the referral, whether it was an inside or outside, whether I gave them the card, told them they would call, put the address information in, the phone number, the email address of the person, anything I'd like to tell them about that referral, choose the temperature, click and enter another one right away, or save and quit. And now what happens is that person gets an email letting them know that I passed them a referral. And here's the coolest thing. How many vice presidents do we have on the call today? The POMS report gets updated automatically. So that's one less referral slip that you have to enter into your POMS report. I just saw a big resounding yeah on the comments. So same thing with thank you for closed business and one-to-ones and CEUs. And with one-to-ones, only one person has to enter it. So if I do a one-to-one with you, I enter the slip. You don't even have to enter it. We both get credit in our POMS report. So it makes life a lot easier for the VPs. It makes it easier for us as members because we can do this information right away. So on top of that, you'll see on the left-hand side here a bunch of My Menu items. And all of these menus here, these are the same things as the operations and the reports and the chapter menus. But the cool thing is that you can customize them. So you'll be able to click on Configure. You can drag and drop and change the order, put them in any order that you'd like. Let's say that you don't ever use the Manage Members feature or the View Mentor feature. You can take them right out of the list. And since you were just on this webinar, of course you're going to want to put the chapter goals all the way up at the top. And now your menu will be customized to your liking. So no more hunting around and trying to find what your various menus are. They're all right here for you. You can see that my Enter Chapter Goals went towards the top where I dropped it. And it gives us quick access to those things. So that's just a quick preview. And Meg, is there anything you want to brag about that's upcoming in this new version?
I think the whole thing is just absolutely fantastic. I think that I think this is going to be something that a lot of the members can get really, really excited about, for sure. And Jeremy, we have tons of questions about the new functionality. So if you want to start reading through those questions,
and I do know that we're at the top of the hour. So I am always happy to stay on these webinars as long as people have questions, whether it's about what we're talking about now or anything about the system. I will stay on these calls as long as you have a valid question. So for me, the time isn't an issue. But if there is anybody that does need to leave, I do thank you for your time for being here today. And I do look forward to seeing you on a future webinar. And a good referral for me is to go back and tell your chapter about these webinars and get them onto future webinars. So let me take a look at some of these questions here. And what do we have here? We have who has authority to enter this info, a member or leadership? That's from Joy. I'm not sure which you're referring to.
I think she was referring to the slips, actually. So for those people who are entering slips, the members can actually enter slips themselves. So they'll be able to do that. And then the vice president or membership coordinator will still be the one that actually goes in and validates the PALMS report and adds any paper slips that they receive at the meeting.
Right. Perfect. So, yeah, there was another question on here that said about confusion. So what will happen is if you've entered the slip here online, there's this, if we go back to the module here, there's a personal meeting activity report. So what the member would do is they print out their own copy of this to pass in at the meeting that do not conflict. They look different than the regular referral slip. So they don't fill out a paper referral slip when they go to the meeting if they've already entered it into the system. And you'll see that on this form it tells you all the thank you for closed business, the one-to-ones, the CEUs that you would report on at the meeting, but there's no need to put in another slip at that point. So let's see. Again, I think I just answered your question, Amanda, as well as Scott. And David asks, when does this roll out? And it rolls out towards the end of this month. So last week, if not the first week in November. And a recording will be made available. What I'll do is in a couple of days after I've got the recording uploaded, I will go ahead and email out a thank you for attending this webinar, along with a link to be able to view this afterward. So Penelope asks, so how would the VP validate the info if a slip is no longer required to be submitted in the meeting if the member enters the info in the system? Megan?
That one goes back to these referral slips. The paper, they'll print their personal meeting activity, and you can use that paper slip to say, as in case of a referral reality check, you can say, okay, hey Jeremy, how did that referral to David go? Well, for SAF, DS, AF, and you can actually do that there. The other thing is most of our members, the people in your chapter that give bona fide, solid, high-quality referrals, and you know those folks that probably don't. And that really is a conversation we want you to have as the membership committee to determine, if that person, how you can improve the quality of the referrals that are passed there. So you don't always have to necessarily have a referral slip as we know it today to be able to address some of those other issues that might come up.
Cool. So I know we've gone over. For those of you that are still on the call, I have 3 favors to ask you, and the first of which is to go to, if you have any questions at all after today's session, you need help with the system in any way, obviously talk to your executive director or director consultant, or if it's a technical question about BNI Connect, if you click on this little question mark button within BNI Connect, it'll take you to support.bniconnect.com, and here you'll see our support site, and you'll see all of our upcoming webinars listed. I will be posting the October webinar schedule in the next day or so. You'll also see a number of help forums, so training guides, how to do things. If you want to learn how to email your chapter, for example, there's a nice walkthrough here. It tells you exactly how to do that in the system, and you can find more information about BNI Connect that way. If you still have a question after looking through the guides and all the help forums, just click on Submit a Request. You can put your name, what region you're from, what country you're from, some information about it, even attach an attachment or put a screencast so you can take a video of exactly what the problem is, and we'll try to help you out. If it's a membership-related question, such as why haven't my dues renewed yet or something like that, we will send you right back to your executive director or director consultant, so please do contact them first on especially policy-related issues or things to do with membership. And finally, if you could go to facebook.com/BNI Connect Global. This is our Facebook page. If you could go up there, please give us a like. This is also where we do webinar announcements. We do tips and tricks. You can see we posted all of our previous webinars, a link to them up there. So chat with us, leave us some comments. If you liked today's webinar, drop us a line, let us know about it. And we'd love to hear from you up there. And again, a good referral for me is we would love to see these webinars filled with people. If you could go back to your chapter and tell them about the webinars, get them onto a future webinar, go to your regional website. You'll be able to register there, or go to support.bniconnect.com and click on the link on the webinar schedule. Meg, is there anything else that you'd like to close with?
No, I just want to say thank you all for having such interest in the goals for your chapters. What get measured gets done, and if you start really focusing on your goals, you're going to raise the bar of your chapter members, and everyone is going to make more money. So thank you very much for caring enough to give us an hour and a little bit of your time.
And Meg, thank you so much for taking time out of your incredibly busy day today to help out all of these members. I think we had a record number of people on this call, and greatly appreciate your time as well. Thank you, everybody that attended, and happy connecting. We'll talk to you soon.